Hey there, Squirrel Army. How's it going? For today, I want to discuss the problems of trying to have casual fun while playing a strategic game.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alrighty, so I think this is something that has come up here and there before, but this is the thing. We are in a strategic game, and we have to make strategic decisions in said game. But the more and more you lean into strategic strategy and sort of making your deck and your choices and what you're kind of doing more consistent, the less unique your deck becomes and the more streamlined it becomes, and sort of also the less casual and quote unquote fun or silly or whatever it sort of becomes. Yes, you can still have fun in making those choices and whatnot. I love making the choices of what's going in my deck, so I certainly wouldn't want to give that part up either. But again, at a certain point, the more strategic you plumb with your choices in your deck, the easier or the harder perhaps it is to have a fun deck that you can play with everyone or almost everyone, and the more powerful it becomes and the more you need to realize this is a deck that can't be played with everyone or doesn't play well with everyone. So it's one of those things that we have to go through in our assessment, and that is part of the strategy. Because again, yeah, sure, again, there's no problems in building a much more powerful deck. You can build whatever power deck you want, but you've got to realize again, where is this deck out? And have I stumbled myself into going, I've become too strategic about this deck? All I've cared about with this deck is the end goal of winning. And we're all here to win and that, but still, we want that journey of having fun with our friends at our LGS, at our home group, whatever it is. We're all doing different janky things or whatever we're trying to do. And sure, again, if you want to have one CDH deck and have that one CDH game or whatever it is per night, that's fine. Again, I'm not saying anything about that. You decide what you want to do and what kind of decks you want to play, but you've got to realize that getting more and more into that direction takes you further and further away from having those games that you can have with everyone, and takes you more and more away from the more synergistic sort of cards, and you're just relying on either tutors or that sort of thing, or more of the fast mana sort of thing than something like, I don't know, Mana Geode, let's say that. Because that's a 3 mana rock, scries a card when it enters. You know, if you're in that scry deck, that might matter. It might not because it's just when it enters, but still, whatever. It could be somewhat relevant. So, you're saying there's a piece of synergy there if I'm in that scry deck. So, how important is that scry to me? Because it could draw me a card. Or whatever. it could help me with my game plan. So again, that is all right, but you've now got a 3-cost mana monarch. And is that the best? Because, well, it's obviously not the best, but is it the best? Because, you could be playing whatever that walrus is that enters and scries too. Yes, you can't tap it straight away like you could tap the mana rock, but still it's a blocker. And I sort of had that conversation before with a few people saying you shouldn't run mana dorks and all that stuff before here on the channel, but I don't think it's that bad. And I even debated it again with myself the other day and going, is this alright? And I was just like, how else can you have very early game consistent mana ramp? And I was like, there's not many ways in which you can have consistent mana ramp that early in the game. So again, it's very tough to justify anything else in some regards, because again, let's take Llanowar Elves and let's take Wood Elves there. Because Wood Elves is pretty darn good, but problem there is it's 3 mana. So am I going to sacrifice the efficiency of Llanowar Elves or whatever, Elvish Mystic, whatever it is, one of the 1-drop mana dorks, versus a 3-drop spell that just gets me a land into play untapped? Now, that land will probably stick around for the rest of the game, whereas my, Wood Elves may not, and it doesn't really need to. But again, perhaps if I'm in a Merrin deck or something like that, Muldrotha, depends, sort of those style of decks, or if I'm a Flicker deck or something else, maybe it does depend. But just in generic senses, why would I pick something that's more overcosted? And yes, I could go with Nature's Law and 3 visits just to have ramp spells that are pretty good. But again, for the most part, there's that strategic element that comes into it. And most of the decks that I play and most of the decks that I see out in the format are aggro creature decks. So again, me saying that the synergies that are in my deck care about creatures, well, now I care about, not having instant sorceries or artifacts in my deck. So that's another reason not to run mana rocks in my deck, especially when you're in green. Green doesn't need mana rocks. I've said that before in another video as well. But still, there's that thought that, well, mana rocks can tap right away. But again, when you've got a 1-drop mana dork, it's going to tap on turn 2 the same as what a mana rock, or most mana rocks will. Or most of the more played ones, not the higher CDH ones perhaps, but still, that strategic part of me thinking about how good this is has made that, deck have a lot more lower drop creatures. So now, even so, sometimes you don't get them, but still, they are, in a sense, fast mana because they come down on turn 1 and they're very efficient. And yes, late game, they can do more. So that's, again, another reason why, you have your Beast Whisperers or whatever. They draw a card, now you don't care because they replace themselves. So as long as they got you some mana in the early game, for the most part, again, I think they're fine. And late game, if you get them and they're not that useful, yeah, sure, they just replace themselves, hopefully. Again, that, or they can chip in for damage, or they can chip in to block, or whatever. So there's lots of other little things. But again, I'm looking at that as strategic for me, for my deck, for what I'm doing in that deck. Now, there are other decks, say I built Calamax or whatever. I specifically want to be instants in Calamax, but if I was building an instant and sorcery deck, then yeah, sure, you want as many instant sorceries as possible, but there are a lot of good creatures that also do stuff, and you want to be gaining those advantages throughout the game. And there are a couple of cards, especially in my Chatterfang deck, that rely on landfall. And the problem with those is there's not very many ways. Well, there are ways in the color, but there aren't many ways in that deck to get extra landfalls. But there's only 2 of those cards. But I can't really find anything else to replace in those slots. So I'm just like, I don't know what to do with these 2 cards because they're pretty bad, because they're not very consistent and they don't do anything super amazing. Yes, sure, there are times that they do stuff and they do well, but they only will generate, 1 clue or 1 treasure or 1 food per turn. And I did want to make that deck more focused on foods, treasures, and clues, but still, they're very inconsistent at doing that thing. So strategically, I should be looking to take them out. But again, it's just like, well, I don't have anything that I can find to take them out for. So again, it's just not working for that deck. Yes, I could put in some stuff that plays extra lands, but like 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to have those cards when I have those other effects. So, the provisioners and whatnot. So it's just one of those things where I'm stuck thinking about how good this is and how do I strategically make it better, but where is the step that's too far with me thinking about this strategic, game plan of what my deck's trying to do and all the parts that are compartmentalizing that game plan? It does become really tough. So it's one of those things. But again, you've got to think about these sorts of things. But again, it's tough. Like I said in a video before, sometimes I feel like we spend more time sitting and thinking, going, oh man, how do I get this to work and whatnot. And I sort of went through that in that video quite a bit, but still, it's one of those things. Sometimes the whole, process of, deck building, it is a strategic thing. And that's the problem, again, with being in this casual format. And the problem with the whole system of which we have, which is that they release new cards and they continue to release new cards that are more powerful, and it just, the rising tide bringing up all ships. Yes, sure, my Chatterfang deck can be pretty strong, but it can also be terrible, absolutely terrible at times. And there's no real solution other than let's put in some tutors to make it more consistent. And I don't want to do that because I'm not a big person to play tutors ever. And even if someone gives me, what's the Wishclaw Talisman? I'll sit it there and just never use it because I'm like, I don't know what to tutor it for. Like, I have no clue what to tutor it for the most part. And I'm just like, sometimes, yes, I kind of know, but most of the time I don't because I'm just like, well, I have no like superset combos. So I'm just like, well, I don't know what to get. I just want to get some card draw or something. And then I'm like, well, I don't know. um, this turn I didn't draw a land, so I really need a land. Or this turn I've drawn somehow 50 lands. I don't know. Which is always the other problem. Like I say, yeah, you could have all these lands in your hand, but you can only play one per turn. So it's like, okay, cool. Even with the provisioner and that, when I have them and have all the lands in my hand, I'm like, cool, I can play one per turn. And especially with the provisioner, it's like, cool, I don't need any more mana, so I might as well get a food, and that's not that amazing, especially since like foods have gotten a bit better, but still there's not much to do with foods, and the life gain is mediocre. Like, yeah, sure, it can be okay, certainly, if you're in a tough spot, but otherwise, it's a bit tough sometimes. But that's that strategic side of how do I balance this out? How do I make my deck consistent enough for me to be able to play it or for these cards to do anything? And yeah, maybe when you have those cards in hand, you can't play them. You just can't play them unless you've got that follow up land because it's like, cool, even if I play this card, strategically it makes no sense. Like, because it's not gonna do anything, so I might as well keep it in my hand, and if the time comes that it's useful, then sure, maybe then I can deploy it, but how long, again, getting into that strategic thought, do I have to hold on to this card that is effectively dead? But then again, you're sort of saying, well, if I play it, I've wasted 3 mana, and it's still a strategically dead card, but now it's on my field. So it can attack and block, but that's about it. Like, and if you're not in a good position, then it's like gonna be very bad for you. So you're just gonna be sitting there going, well, I just need a blocker. That's it. Like, at the end of the day, right now, I need a blocker. Or especially a lot of times you need reach, especially, or flying. Because every single time with that deck, that's the main problem. Flyers just kill you. But still, it's one of those things. But still, it's so annoying sometimes that the cards and the strategy don't work out for what you want, but that's the randomness of the game. And I do enjoy the randomness to some extent, as I sort of said, but at a certain extent as well, it takes away when your cards and when your deck is not performing in the way that you want. So again, you're wanting to go, okay, how can I make this better, make it more consistent so it does what I wanted to do more of the time? How do I guarantee that I'm going to, get going with this deck? Because again, it can get going, or any deck that I have, you have, Steve has, whoever, again, can get going. But again, that strategic thought of I've got to make this as consistent as what I can, and do I have time for these cards that don't really do the job that they say they do on the tin? Am I going to put in a card like Gladriel, which, does create foods, treasures, and clues, I think, as well. Um, but she's got to attack, and she's really small. Oh no, she puts counters on stuff, I think. But only other things, not her. And she has no natural evasion, and she's only a 3/3. So yeah, there's lots of those little things of going, well, that's a more expensive card. It is more consistent because it's all on that card, and you don't have to rely on getting lands or whatever, or being able to play extra lands. And it's like, well, which one of these would I cut? So that comes up, and I want to cut both, but I don't know another card that I could put in there. Maybe with the new Ixalan set, they'll put out more treasure stuff, but I don't know, maybe I did complain a while back saying that they shouldn't have give treasures to green, but Chatterfang really needs some token generation, so I wouldn't have been minded if they had given more of it to black, honestly. But still, it's just such a weird position for that deck because it's such a unique kind of deck. But again, I have a lot of decks, and I know a lot of other people have decks, and you come through this like little wormhole when you start getting into the strategy. Of course, you can just play your jank deck, rock up to your LGS and see how you go, or whatever else. You can just rock up to your commander table night or whatever and just see how it goes. Like I say, shut up and just play the game. And feel like some people overanalyze it. So again, the more time you sort of analyze stuff is the less time that you get to actually play your deck. But when you play your deck and you go, man, these cards aren't really performing the way I want them to, so I just don't know what to do with them. I kind of want to cut them, but I don't know what to cut them for. Or there might be one card that might be okay, kind of, but then you've got to be really selective with what you're kind of doing with it. But at least you can make those selective decisions in the moment when you're playing those games rather than being like, cool, well, I'm just here not being able to do anything with this card because it's tied to me getting lands and I haven't gotten lands in 12 turns or whatever. So that's not a strategic decision. That's just I have had bad luck of not getting any more lands for several turns or whatever it is. Or I've just got the whole land hand, but yet again, I can only deploy one of them per turn or whatever. Or again, I don't have them in concert with each other. So I might have all the lands, and again, if I put more land play stuff in there, I could have that as well. But then I don't have the card, which is 2 cards in the deck, to benefit off that extra landfall, which is what I put them in there for. Yes, I would have extra mana and have extra lands and extra ramp, effectively, but still, that's not the main reason why I put those sorts of cards in there. It was to synergize with this other card. But again, what are the chances of me getting these cards together without having tutors? And why am I playing these tutors if I'm not just going, okay, cool, here's my 2-card win con, bam, the game's over. Like, so yeah, it's one of those things. I even put in the guy that makes treasures when your creatures die. And I played a game with it, and I had it out on the field, and I'm people are like, oh, you go infinite. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, how? Like, you go infinite. You have Chatterfang and you have this. You go infinite. You sack a thing and then you make a treasure, you make a squirrel, sack the squirrel and use the treasure to sack the squirrel, kill a thing, blah, 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 and neg this thing, blah, blah, blah. And then you repeat, rinse and repeat. And I was like, yeah, sure, except that I've got nothing else on my board. So therefore, I don't have anything to sack. I have only my commander to sack, and that's it. And I can't replay my commander because I don't have 5 mana. I have 3 mana, and when I sack my commander, I'll have 4. So I won't be able to do anything. And they're like, oh. And they're like, how long has that been going on for? I'm like, I've had this for ages. Just finally played it, or whatever. Because it was the only thing I could do other than just discard a card, because I haven't drawn lands in several turns. You know? So again, like, sometimes you get very unlucky. I get very unlucky. But again, that's why you kind of start going down this track of going, oh my god, for frick's sake, how can I please make my deck just a little bit more consistent and actually get some freaking lands, get off 3 mana for once or whatever. And then the other time, it'll be like, oh my god, can I please get an alive draw instead of another brick land? So again, you get those janky problems when you're not just going, cool, I'm going to tutor for this, I'm going to tutor for that, I'm going to tutor for this, oh look, I win. But I don't want to just do that, because again, that has become now too strategic. I go get this with this at this point, blah blah blah, and then I tutor this or I do that, and then, oh look, I won. You know, like, I don't want that. I want to draw into the whole thing. I want to, and again, that's not one of the only combos, I think, not, but again, it's just like one of the most infamous ones, but I only put it in there mainly to be like a deterrent to other people, to being like, don't blow up my stuff or I'll get treasures. But just so happens again that it is a combo with my commander, but it isn't mainly for that. And I don't really use that ability very much because, like, it's not a fun ability to sort of come about. So again, strategically, that's an amazing ability when it does finally come up and I actually have more than just it and my commander and more than 3 mana and haven't whiffed for several turns or whatever. Strategically, it would be more optimal just to be like, okay, cool, I go infinite and can kill all your guys' stuff. But that's not very fun, you know, if I get it. But again, getting it is the big thing because there's not very much consistency. And I don't want there to be that much consistency to where there is one clear, this is an I win combo game plan or whatever. It should be that, you know, you can sit back and just be like, okay, cool. I want to see what Steve's deck does. I want to see what, you know, Talon's deck does. I want to see what this person's deck does. I really want to show these people what my deck does, not just, here's my, you know, demonic tutor, here's my this, here's my that, cool, I combo, I win. That's not really showing them what my deck does. It's showing them, oh, I know how this combo works, and I have enough tutors to get to it. I don't know. But that's the strategic versus fun aspect of my deck, and or that deck specifically in this circumstance. But again, it applies to all my decks, all your decks, all of Steve's decks, all of JC's decks, all of everyone's decks. When you're going, how do I make this more consistent, or how do I make this better? You're going toward that point of going over the cliff, of going, well, shit, now what do I do? Because now I've taken all the fun, all the randomness, and all of the other strategic synergies that are in there out just to make it super duper consistent. And yes, maybe the deck's much more powerful, but actually I kind of want to tune it down so that it's a little bit more fun and I can play it with people again, in just some casual games at the kitchen table or at my LGS or whatever. So, yeah, we all have to go through those steps when we're thinking about our decks and saying, is this becoming too strategic? And maybe that's what you want if you're playing CDH again. But even then, when you're playing CDH, it's a known list for the most part. Like, you play these cards, that's the list of cards you play. Because, there isn't much, choice per se when you're playing those formats. And, yeah, I don't want that. I want to be the one having some input into what my deck is doing, not just I'm going to copy and paste somebody else's list and then play it. It has nothing... Again, I don't understand it because it's not made by me, and it's not my card choices. So when I play it, I'm looking at all these cards, especially the tutors, and going, I don't know what to tutor for. Even if I know one or two of the combos, I'll go, well, should I tutor for this or should I tutor that? Do I have either parts in my hand? Probably not. But anyway, if I have to tutor for 2 cards or even for 1 card, when can I combo? How do I know it's safe? Blah, 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 this and that. I'm not going to just play duress and just be like, let's see if somebody has a Caterpillar spell. I'm not going to just duress the blue player because I'm probably playing against 4 blue players or whatever, or 3 blue players or whatever. But still, I'm not going to do that kind of thing because, again, it doesn't seem worth it to me, especially in a multiplayer format and that sort of thing. Again, so... And then you might duress them or something and be like, cool, they have a handful of counter spells. Obviously. Now I can get rid of one of them, but now they've got 4 more, so... But yeah, you might be able to get rid of one of the 3 ones, but still they might have another one, so you're just going, well, now I can't play anything else, so pass the turn, and then they win. So it's just like, again, I'm not a very big person on the more competitive side of things. I like a certain amount of consistency to my decks, but I don't like, this whole metagaming thing. And I don't really agree with doing it per se, but that's just me. But if other people want to do that and they have fun with that, cool, off you go. Someone was talking to me about 7 Point, a little while back, and I was like, dude, I have literally negative 10 interest in this. Literally minus no interest. Because it's, again, another competitive format And even though it is EDH, no, or whatever. It's sort of EDH, but just no interest. Again, I want to have fun. I want to show, oh, I'm going to play this, and this is going to do this. Cool. Pass the turn. You have your turn, you have your turn, blah, blah, blah. Cool. On my turn, I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And get to showcase, the fun parts of that deck and start making fun little interactions with other people. I'm going to steal your nuts, and things like that and whatnot with my squirrels. My squirrels are going to get ya. And things like that, because that's the janky, silly fun of that deck, and I really love it. Of course, I love squirrels, as you guys know, and that's kind of why I'm talking about that one specifically, but I've been fiddling with that deck recently as well, but it's just one of those things that I'm just going, how do I fix this deck? How do I fix this deck? How do I fix this deck? Over and over. And perhaps there is a way to put Galadriel in there and take out one of the other cards, because, at least the Provisioner actually gives me two of my things, like foods and treasures, whereas the Tracker only gives me clues. And yes, I think that's one of the only ones that actually gives me clues. Actually, I put in that enchantment when your creatures die, you get clues, and when you sack clues, you get tokens, because I was like, well, it makes two types of tokens, so that kind of works for what I'm kind of trying to do. So yeah, even if you get Wrathed, and you don't get to see all the tokens that you make from the death of all your creatures with Chatterfang, well, you can hopefully get him back and then start sacking those clues to start making those little humans, and then you can start building your squirrel army from there. And you're also drawing cards, so you're refilling your hand, hopefully, and getting back in the game slowly but surely. So yeah, that was the main thought there. But yeah, there's still a lot of strategic thoughts that I need to go through with each of my decks for the most part. But we all do that, and we all have to do that. But we also have to know when and where to stop, and to know, is this a deck, or is my play style, or whatever it is, the type of style that wants to go higher and more powerful? Can I mentally, process a more powerful deck? Because the more powerful your deck becomes, the more complex it becomes as well. So, and that's one of my biggest, things that I always say about decks. Keep it simple, stupid, because the more overly complicated it is for you, the harder it is to, actually do anything and win, because now you don't know what you're doing, because you've got too much stuff that's kind of going on in all these directions again. Or, just the paralysis of choice problem, which is what I have, because I'm like, dude, I have, well, not literally, but basically 999 cards in my deck, or 92, or whatever it is. So how am I going to choose, even if I have a tutor, one of those cards to put to my hand with the tutor? Yes, again, I could go for that card that kind of wins me the game, but if I don't have another thing to sack, which is another squirrel, and there's only one other squirrel in that deck besides the things that actually generate squirrels, so again, you'd actually have to go for something that generates squirrels in a pretty efficient way. So again, there's a lot more of, but it could be good type thing, but it won't be some other time either, because again, like those besides I think the bird that makes food when it enters and you can pay 2 mana to make food, I think it's the most cheap, efficient token generator that's in the deck. So it's like there's nothing cheaper than that, but it comes with big asterisks of saying, well, I need lands as well, and it's not always that you're gonna get those. So yeah, the consistency issue of those sorts of choices sometimes means that strategically, even though saying, well, I'm actually going to tutor for a 5 mana spell or a 6 mana spell or whatever it is, because those are just more consistent, so I don't have to worry, or at least the ones that I have are more consistent, so I know that I'll get the token off that. So I'm not going to have to worry about me hitting that land, even though I might be like, well, actually, I haven't hit a land, so the problem is still that I need land. So I'm still on 3, so I'm still sitting here hoping that I get lands. That, or again, you have to actually just tutor for lands, just to be like, cool, I can now play the game. Because I'm actually off 3 mana freaking finally. Or, again, you've got the other problem of being like just absolutely flooded and being like, can I get any gas at all, deck? You know, like, can I not get a break, please? So yeah, like, but it's always the to and fro of the game. And that's the fun of it sometimes. And sometimes you just got to get back and say, oh, well, and laugh about it. Because if you didn't laugh about it, it would probably drive you insane, which is probably where I'm already at. But still, we all knew this. But still, it's one of those things that I do think people have to kind of take those moments and really, like, internalize those thoughts of, you know, like, again, some people will do that, of saying, well, that's fine with me because I don't really care. Like, again, that's fine with me, but I'm talking, like, in general. Like, I'm not saying you have to be making these specific decisions, but when you're saying from a strategic standpoint, if you're looking at a deck like this and saying, well, what are my consistency, you know, directions? What should I do? Put tutors in, do this, da 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 da, that sort of thing. Go for your combos, that sort of thing. So that would increase the consistency, therefore avoiding those pitfalls of some of those cards that aren't quite as consistent. But then again, a lot of the more consistent cards that are in that deck are more than 3 mana, so, or 4 mana, or even 5. So again, when you've got that issue of sitting there going, dude, I need a land for several turns, it might even, again, be the strategic, like, dude, I just need a land. That's literally what I need. So strategically, all I need to do is get that land. So, again, but do I want to do that? Well, I at least want to play this game. So I at least want to get that land at some point. So, but sometimes, again, you might need to actually hit that land just to be like, okay, guys, look, I won't kill your stuff. I'll just kill Roy's stuff over there. I promise I won't kill your stuff. I just want to kill this person's stuff so the rest of us can play a game. Then you can source to Plowshare is my thing, or Path to Exile my thing, or whatever you want to do. I don't care. I just want to crack this guy so that we can all start playing this game, because I've been out of this game for several times. So, or whatever it's been. So, again, starting to communicate with your opponents, and they know what's going on as well, because they can see, oh, what's going on here? You didn't play a land that turn. Yeah, I would have if I could have. Oh, you did it again. Okay, and you're discarding a card. Oof. And again. Okay. And then for several turns after that. So it's just like, yep, I'm not doing nothing, bro. And they're like, cool. Like, I think that they didn't kill my thing just because they were like, cool, you can't do anything with it. So, like, where's the threat? So they were doing a good job of threat assessment, but yeah, this is one of those things sometimes. And it's like, please don't kill it. Please don't kill it. It's the only thing that's sort of protecting me half the time from anything. Just so I can block stuff and just be like, okay, I can block stuff. Cool. But yeah. Or at least some stuff. But anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for this one. You guys can let me know what you guys think, writing your thoughts down there in the comments below. Hope you'll join me again in the next one.